Today on Cool Things in the Bible, Moses. 3 points. 1, his relationship with God. 2, his personality. And 3, where does he rank in the goat conversation? Now, God goes from murderous anger towards this guy to becoming BFF with him within a couple of months. When God first calls Moses, he rejects God's calling twice. God is so angry he's going to kill the guy. And then his wife intercedes, and he proceeds to become who God said he would become, a leader, an effective public speaker. And he becomes extremely close to God through that experience. They're like BFFs. They have a meal together face to face. God shows him his glory. Wow. They speak face to face. And he becomes the intermediary between God and his people, a Christ-like figure in the Old Testament, receiving the law, giving it to the people, leading on behalf of God. He was like the concept of a pope, a true pope, military leader, spiritual leader. He was the guy, which is hilarious because, again, when God first approaches him, he doesn't want to have anything to do with that role. He's at a very low point in his life, zero ambition, no trust in God. But that's God's playbook. God uses the humble. He breaks the proud, like he did with Moses, making him humble and weak, fit for his use. And that's the ideal human relationship, ultimately, between God and man. For a variety of reasons, because of our sin, because God's primary motivation is his glory. He doesn't want us running around chasing our glory. Just like Moses, the Apostle Paul went through this as well. Now, getting into Moses' personality, point number 2. The pendulum swings, again, severely with this guy. He goes from rich, strong, assertive, skilled prince to being on the run from Pharaoh in the desert. A very low point, depressed. He almost has a nihilistic attitude. And when he rejects God's call, there's a cowardice there for sure. And it's not necessarily rooted in a lack of talent. Remember, he had training and skill in Egypt as a prince. But more, he just didn't care, and he had no ambition. At this point, he had just given up in life, and he was just existing. That's understandable. But God, as only God can do, re-energizes him, injects him with some spiritual testosterone, and his heart grows a couple sizes like the Grinch. And he actually gets to the point where he cares so much for his fellow Israelites that he says on a number of occasions, look, God, I know they've sinned terribly against you, but please blot me out of your book of life instead and save them. Wow. Again, like the Apostle Paul. Which is interesting because his people were not exactly devoted followers, and they grumbled against him, complained, they were rebellious. But becoming as close to God as Moses did does that to his soul, to our souls. We start to have genuine love in our hearts for our fellow humans. We have mercy on them because God had mercy on us. And Moses, yes, has great mercy and compassion, also righteous anger. When the people made that golden calf, bowed down to it, Moses was very angry. He destroyed the 2 tablets. He crushes the golden calf into a fine dust, mixes it with water, and then basically waterboards those people, making them drink that stuff, and then tells the Levites to kill them all. And Moses suffered from extreme depression at certain points along his leadership journey. He asks God to kill him, like suicidal, multiple times, like the prophet Elijah. So In a way, Moses' personality is an ultimate representation of us humans. He goes from pride in Egypt as a prince to nihilism in the desert. He goes from love towards his people to ultimate depression and suicide. Cycle repeat with that guy. And so, just like him, just like us, we are in desperate need of God's grace and mercy on a daily basis. Now, number 3, where does Moses rank in the goat conversation? Now, beyond what we've already talked about, all of those amazing things, let's talk about another few interesting points. God personally buries Moses in the desert. Quite an honor, and not repeated with anyone else. Then the devil himself fights with Michael, the archangel, over his body. The devil wanting to use Moses' body as a snare, as an idol, to entice the people into worshiping it. Kind of akin to the Roman Catholic Church and their first-class relics within their reliquaries. Now, God himself sounds off on the goat conversation in Ezekiel 14 when he says, and he calls out 3 guys by name. Even if Noah, Daniel, and Job were living in a land devoted to destruction, they could only save their own skins based on their righteousness. And so Moses doesn't make the cut here. Moses wasn't exactly a super righteous guy. Now, Moses does show up at the Transfiguration with Elijah and Jesus and the 3 apostles. That's huge. And the Bible hints at, maybe implicitly, that he's one of the 2 witnesses of Revelation along with Elijah again. And Moses and Elijah are pretty similar, as we've discussed a couple of times. So with God himself sounding off on the goat conversation with those 3 guys, and Moses didn't make the cut there, and on balance, based on everything we've discussed, I think it's safe to say that Moses has to be within the top 5 spiritual leaders of all time. Maybe not within the top 3, but an interesting question to ask God about in heaven someday. God bless you.